We take gold, platinum, and silver and melt it into the final product. But we've taken that process from Excel, paper, into this piece of technology that everyone can use. And today we've slowly grown that program to where it is, taking our manufacturing process digital across all of our internal manufacturing.
You're listening to Augmented Ops, where manufacturing meets innovation. We highlight the transformative ideas and technologies shaping the front lines of operations, helping you stay ahead of the curve in the rapidly evolving world of industrial tech. Your host for this episode is Eric Marandet, Chief Business Officer of Tulip, the frontline operations platform.
Welcome to Augmented Ops. Today I am joined by Nicollet Naya. And Nicollet has probably one of the cool and most impactful jobs in manufacturing. She is on the front lines of an organization-wide digital transformation at a leading luxury brand. This is a brand that we can't mention by name, but that everyone knows intimately, has either wanted to wear or is wearing. Let me put it that way. And we're going to hear how this story started as an intern 5-6 years ago, all the way up through leading this digital transformation, literally deploying solutions that are impacting every single worker with hands-on product in this company just 3 years into her career. So Nicollet, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Eric. Pleasure to be here.
So Nicollet, you have one of the most interesting jobs out there in manufacturing, if you ask me. What is it that you do every day? Like, what's your scope of responsibilities within this leading luxury brand?
Yeah, sure. So today I work for a leading luxury jewelry manufacturer based here in New England. And one of the main parts of my job is to help digitally transform our operations from taking pen and paper operations into this new digital age, bringing computers to the manufacturing floor and welcoming our operators into that digital transformation. So not just the staff professionals, but really the craft and the operators are becoming part of that change.
So you're taking technology and you're driving it down to that frontline worker, and you're using this to help augment, change the work that they're doing day to day.
Exactly.
Yep. And how has that gone? Is that well received? Is it challenging? Surely there's bumps along the road.
Yeah, it started off a bit challenging, but we started off with a pilot and really gained a lot of buy-in for both the operators as well as senior management. And today we've slowly grown that program to where it is, taking our manufacturing process digital across all of our internal manufacturing.
So it's been quite a journey. How long, and let me ask, how long have you been at this?
So I've been with the company for a little over 3 years now, and specifically digital transformation about 2. But our company has been growing this operation for 6+ years. So we've been on quite the journey, if you ask me.
And so this journey started about 6+ years ago. And I have to admit, I remember the beginning of this journey. But this journey has been an interesting one. It started out small but ambitious, but here we are now where you really are leading this across all domestic production facilities to include, I guess, some foreign production. Mm-hmm. But really, like, I think it's fair to say everybody in your organization is touching your work quite literally every single day for every product that gets produced. Is that a fair statement?
Totally fair. As of about a month ago, I would say that is really the new way we work. Yep.
So let's go back in time. So I first met you, or indirectly met you, not 3 years ago, but much earlier than that, when you were an intern and this project was just getting started and you came in. And I distinctly remember I was looking at, spoiler alert, a lot of the work that Nicollet is describing here is actually happening within the Tulip platform, which is not the focus of the conversation here today, but it's certainly an enabling factor here. But I remember in the early days when we were just getting started here, seeing this name of this intern pop up who just started like producing some of the most interesting applications and pushing this out across the shop floor. And then that intern 6 months later or something disappeared. And this was like circa 2018. Let's go back to the beginning. You're in college. You end up in process engineering at this leading luxury brand. Let's go way back in time here.
All right, let's move back a few years. So I was studying material science and engineering, really driving my passion for both materials as well as processing as a whole. I've grown up just loving getting hands-on and crafty, finding that in engineering, looking for opportunities in undergrad that I could pair that love with also something I'm passionate about, and that is luxury jewelry. So pairing those two together, I had that opportunity during my sophomore summer to really dive into a process engineering role. And as you said at the time, Tulip was a solution that had initially became a part of our process engineering team, and now it's part of our global operation. But I had the opportunity to really learn the basic parts of the functionality and drive digital transformation from such a young age. And as you said, I finished off college and jumped right back to that same company, and here I am driving that same initiative.
So you came in as a sophomore in college.
Yep.
You show up to your internship, and there's this tool available. Tell me a little bit about that initial experience. Like, so you show up and you say, hey, here's the job. Here are the problems related to process and production and how we're actually going from converting raw materials here. And if you've never been on site at this particular facility, it is pretty wild. There is like literally walls of gold bars and platinum everywhere. It is a wild, wild place. So you show up here, though, and everything's tracked on pen and paper for the most part, but they're just getting started with this new tool. What was it like for you as a college sophomore, but an engineer, showing up at this environment, and what was your initial experience with the tool?
Yeah, so at that time, I had a very small role within the platform. Mainly I was within the process engineering department. But coming in that summer, I got to experience part of that pilot program in one of our areas of manufacturing casting. And I learned how we were trying to take away a very Excel-driven process, manual process between departments into a more seamless integration. Casting is one of our operations that is been around for hundreds of years. And we take gold, platinum, and silver and melt it into the final product with post-processing, of course. But we've taken that process from Excel, paper, into this piece of technology that everyone can use desk side. Very, very cool as an intern to see that whole life cycle just in one portion of the business, but you can see how that can grow throughout the entire operation.
So the first place we're focusing is this casting process. And as you said, I think the casting process actually goes back several thousand years to like the late Bronze Age.
Exactly.
Well,
yeah, more than that. Exactly.
Yeah, like when they found tin and copper and put them together, casting was born. But anyway, for the history nerds, this is like a several hundreds of years, thousands of years old process. And here you are following the same process. You're melting metal down. You're putting it in a cast. You're spinning it in a centrifuge after it's been heated. And it's like a pretty fickle process. And you're taking this several thousand-year-old process.
And very manual process, too. There's many steps from taking the waxes into forming them into trees, into, as you said, going to the centrifuge, into the casting machines. It's multiple steps, multiple people over multiple days.
And you're taking this very manual craft process that is thousands of years old, and now you're going to try and augment it with technology. I guess my first question is why? They've been doing it for thousands of years. Why change it?
Well, don't get me wrong. It has changed over the years. There's new technology involved. But when it comes to tracking that process and understanding where different products are through that process life cycle, that's where we need some change. And that's where we've had a digital solution come in and become that transformative journey in tracking it from the beginning of its work order to the final product.
Yeah. One of the things that was so fascinating to me when we first started talking about the cast log is how fickle it is in that the type of defects you get, like bubbles, for example, you might take it off and everything looks good, but it's not until you get to a later step where you're polishing that you realize it's a defective part, and then associating days later, weeks later, what were the conditions in the oven? What was the speed of the centrifuge? What work order was this associated with? What was the...
So many variables involved, and we need to track those variables so we can tie them back to, as you said, that work order and solve that problem so it doesn't continue to be an issue down the line. And having a technology allows us also to be able to track that and look at those patterns and see how we can change those patterns if needed.
So you're taking this art and it's becoming a science, and you're the blending of these two.
That's what jewelry making is. It's the love and the passion of art, but also with the science and the precision that needs to be involved. If you think of a diamond, there's many facets to a diamond, but without having science involved, it doesn't become the beautiful product that it is. So it really is that mesh between science and artistry.
Okay, so you come in, you're a digital native. You grew up with these tools. You're studying material science. You go into your first role, and you're faced with this 1,000-year-old process, but now you've got a new set of tools. And you basically take this tradition of the cast process, you're turning it into a science by isolating variables and solving this complex data problem, and you have the tools to do it. And this comes, I recall, from the time fairly intuitively to you, given that you grew up solving these types of problems with the types of tools that are now available to you in this role. But then you left and you went back to university.
Yes.
What happened then?
COVID happened. But other than COVID, I learned a lot along the way. took one computer science engineering class. And in that class, I found a lot of interesting satisfaction in the solving of code and problems, and really took that back with me to my full-time role. And when I was presented the opportunity to use new skills and digitally transform our casting department, I said yes and dove right in. But don't get me wrong, that was a very tricky process at first. I had to learn with very little assistance because it was a new program and was self-taught, but also used a lot of online resources to help build my knowledge and create those initial platforms.
So let me ask, did, I guess, the availability of technology in the context of this role influence your decision to go into manufacturing full-time? Asked in another way, if you were forced to not use all of the tools that you had been studying, the computer science experience that you had, again, albeit one class, a surface understanding, and I don't mean that in any dismissive way,
Right.
but like you're not a trained computer scientist or a software developer. You have a solid understanding of if-then-else logic and basic
That's it.
programming
Exactly.
capabilities that you can apply to solve these complex human meets art meets social dynamics, meets technology, meets complex data problems. Does that influence your decision to go back into manufacturing full-time?
I think I wanted to learn more about it. I was only there for 9 months, internship turned co-op, but I had the satisfaction to see what else is going on. What else can I learn within this space, especially finishing off my material science degree. Working with a luxury jewelry company, you get to learn a lot about how metals are transformed, and whether it be casting or machining, you get to see how they go from start to finish. Now, within the digital side of things, I'm not physically transforming it, but I'm part of that process still and helping transform that process, but just from another angle.
Interesting. Okay. You had at one point the world's most expensive paperweight, I heard, when you first got into your first gig. Can you tell me about that?
Yes, that was definitely a perk of the job. I worked for our hollowware department. It's the department that makes some of the most well-known trophies from around the world: soccer, football, pretty much anything you can think of, we make it. So I had the opportunity to have a very expensive trophy from the NFL on my desk for many months, and it was one of the best paperweights I'm sure I'll ever have in my life. But
yeah, this is like multi-million-dollar paperweight. This is the kind of paperweight that Tom Brady may throw across a river in Miami and hit Gronk with or something.
Something along those lines.
But not to
exactly.
be specific, and just hypothetically. So you come in, you're in the cast log, but things have happened. Like the world has continued to move forward.
They finished the cast log project. It turned out great. It really transformed that department. Instead of running on Excel, they run on Tulip. And it's really what has transformed that department. And they needed me to come in and continue to transform that department. It was our pilot space. So I created an in-process quality control application that helps define problems within the department. And as you said, rework's a big thing. You don't know about defects until they're down the line.
Yep.
So let's collect what we can on the spot. And this application allowed us to collect information regarding the products, send it to quality, and they could have ever-running analytics about the products.
Mm-hmm. And then what? Cast log exists where? Just at that one facility?
Yep, one facility and one department. And that's the extent that the system had gone from my internship through my first year of employment.
But then you come in with a mission, and you're like somehow, I don't even know how your job came into existence, if I'm honest. All I know is that you went from this superstar intern to you get hired, and at some point you like create a full-time job for yourself. Well, you're like, all you do every single day is solve problems using modern technology in the context of manufacturing, and you're like in Tulip all the time doing this. Like, how did that job come into existence?
So we were hiring for a senior MES engineer, and at the time I was still just working on small digital transformation projects, but mainly a process engineer. And I was hesitant about reaching out about this because I had very little experience in the space, and they were hiring for a senior level employee. But I had the confidence. I knew where we needed to go as a company. So I reached out to my direct report and asked about this role and if I fit in and if they see me fitting into this role, and got the job after explaining my vision for the company and where we would go. And
what was your vision?
My vision was what we finished last month, an ecosystem of applications to drive our internal manufacturing workforce and not only run different processes, but run the work order management through the facility.
So you finished this last month. Maybe tell us a little bit about what you completed.
Yeah. So as I said, I refer to it as our own luxury manufacturing ecosystem because it really is. It's taking a compounded application base that goes from multiple departments across multiple facilities to help our craft, our operators, machinists with their work, both work instruction-wise, telling them how to do something. Because in the luxury manufacturing space, knowledge is key. And some of our craft have been with the company for 10 years to 50 years even. And we need to take that knowledge in, and we need to make sure we treasure it and continue to grow the craft that it is. So work instructions, although they aren't super in-depth, they provide so much for the craft and for their continuation of the work effort. So taking that and pairing it with ERP integration, as well as other different work order management processes, allows us to tie what our business finds important, as well as our IT team finds important, and collaborating those two ideas to make this ecosystem really come to life. It was always the vision. This was always the vision, starting with digital transformation. It just really took off when we finally got one resource to run the role.
One resource being you.
Being me. I'm the one resource.
You're the resource. But you go from the cast log and then you move into craft. And craft is like, as the name implies, these are the craftsmen. And when you pay what you pay for this not to be named particular luxury brand, you want to know that this is not just something that was stamped out. Love and craftsmanship was put into this particular piece. And I tell you, you pay for the premium, right? This is the differentiator. This is the value. This is like the identity of the brand, right? And it's kind of interesting, right? Because on the one hand, you want to celebrate the craftsman. So there's very much like a human component to this, but you also want to be able to increase the overall efficiency of the process and identify what's working and not working and share those best practices. It's a specific set of challenges, while generally applicable to many, very specifically are entirely unique to your operation. So how did you think about bridging this?
And as you said, the craft and their love for the art is so important to us, but we still need to make sure that they know how to make thousands of products. It's hard to remember how thousands and thousands of products are made. So this tool isn't replacing how things are made. It's guiding them to remember how things are made if you haven't created them in over 5 years.
Sure.
It's that tool to continue to remember and train the craft. But when it comes to what we term work instructions, we found a way to provide all of that information in a very compostable way. We don't want these to be applications that are so complex that it takes away from what they're trying to do as a process engineer. Mm-hmm. So that's really tying together digital transformation, process engineering, creating those development opportunities so you don't have to be the leading citizen developer to create these apps. You can be a process engineer, and this is part of your role. So really developing that citizen developer program has helped us create these work instructions and move them through our manufacturing.
And we say work instructions, but it's more than work instructions. It's, as I understand, it's production tracking, it's integration, backflushing labor hours, backflushing inventory, real time with the ERP. And interestingly and importantly, there's the craft process, but then there's also people find better ways to do things. And when somebody does, you can see these things, right? And you can say, hey, so-and-so over here is doing it this way, and they're producing a better quality output, and they're doing it in a more efficient way. And that provides, like, I guess maybe I've got some behind the scene knowledge here because I've had the pleasure of spending some time with you talking about this outside of this particular podcast. But what'd you call them? Is your supervisor toolkit? Is that what it's called?
Supervisor settings.
Supervisor settings. Tell me about supervisor settings.
So supervisor settings is an application that's part of our ecosystem that allows the supervisors to be in the know. They can understand what their craft is doing as well as provide upfront analytics. But the main purpose of this is for them to allow the craft to understand how their queue is being managed, whether it's adding work orders, understanding how reworks are being tracked and how many reworks are occurring within an operation. It really gives them all that frontline operations intel desk side.
So you've got thousands of year old craft process that is deeply human and has a very real artistic component to the craft that you want to identify best practices and share those best practices. You don't want to deprive someone of this knowledge where it exists. And yet you have rich telemetry coming off of all of these lines that the supervisor can use to say, all right, are we ahead or behind? Are we what's coming up next, and plan their day, and also do targeted coaching and, provides very specific feedback here, and then manage all of these transactions real time, integrating with the business systems that are actually running the finances for the not to be named leading luxury brand, right?
And I think the reason I do keep saying work instructions is that's where we started. We initially had work instructions to aid the craft, but now we've bridged that gap between just work instructions and this workflow management system. And that's where we've kind of evolved from the initial product to the product we are using today.
Yeah. And so here you are, 2 years into this journey. Let me ask first, you have mentioned citizen developers, but we've also said that you're like, I mean, this is your baby. You've been driving this change, right?
Oh, yeah.
And you're proud of it. I can see you're like, you own this, you know?
Yep.
And I'm like, by extension, I'm super proud. So you're 2 years into this. It's your program, but you're also mentioning citizen developers and supervisors and process engineers. Give the audience an overview of like, what's the surface area of this effort? Who are your citizen developers?
So we have 4 internal manufacturing facilities. At each facility, I would say we have one citizen developer that may lead that operation there. Each facility also has a handful of other citizen developers that are slowly learning the ropes. And I would say that's a credit to this new ecosystem that we've built over the last year. We needed the help. We needed all hands on deck. I couldn't just be me. It would have taken years. So we slowly trained process engineers, engineering technicians, even some supervisors and team leads on what this product is and how can you help us get there faster. Mm-hmm. So we took our process engineers and threw them right in with the rest of the lead citizen developers and had them help us change these applications from the very static work instruction-based applications to these now integrated, multi-level work instruction workflow management system that can be used by their team and in turn benefit them in the processes that they're trying to achieve.
Yeah, interesting. So you're like the quarterback or the I don't know, the lead wrangler. I don't know how you envision yourself, but so you're like a big part of the governance structure, to put it in less cutesy terms. But you have citizen developers at each of the 4 sites that are leads and responsible for the implementation within those sites.
Yeah.
When they're making iterations and changing, do those roll up to you?
Yeah, so we do have a very structured governance model that we put in place around 2 years ago when I first started this journey with digital transformation. And we do have a lot of restrictions around approvals and permissions, just because we want to make sure the product that's going on the floor, in fact, follows the process that is being signed off by leadership. And when I say signed off by leadership, say it's a new product. We want to make sure the process they're saying is correct and is making quality products is being released to the floor. So we have a approval process that is pretty rigorous in the sense of going through different types and levels of management approval. However, it's proved to be very beneficial because the product's always great first time around.
Mm-hmm. So you do have this governance structure in place, and is that done at the site level, or does that come to the central?
It's more centralized, but it depends on the site. The site does get affected in the sense of...
Depends on the use case,
Exactly.
maybe, and things like this. Got it. So fast forward, here you are today. As of a couple of months ago, you've completed this massive effort. I mean, at the risk of using buzzwords, but you've affected this transformation over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And I think, if I look at the engagement data here, what I see is like, I see healthy progress, and then I see, afterburners kick in about 2-3 years ago, and there's a correlation there,
Yep.
And I know that you have a lot on deck for what's coming next that I want to hear about, but here we are. You've got literally everybody at your company that's hands on the product, in the machine shop, at the craft station, in the cast log. They're like interacting with these solutions, and these solutions are helping them guide them in their work and translating to like real business impact for the company.
Yeah, and we're not only seeing this change within the labor-based, craft-based part of the operation, but also in the machining side. We've connected to dozens of our machines, and our machinists now can see real-life feedback of uptime, downtime for the day, as well as put in quality information that can bounce back, and they can see how trends are working, how the product is changing month to month, or maybe there's a problem with a piece of material that came in and we need to backtrack. Where did that material go? We now have that system that we have in place to provide that to the leadership as well as to the machinists themselves.
And what have you found the impact to be to the business? So look, this is all well and good, and it's super interesting, but let's talk dollars and cents for a minute. And I'm not asking for you to reveal any like sensitive information or anything like that, but let's talk about like actual meaningful impact. Like I think we talk about digital transformation as if it's the end in of itself, but it's not. It's a means to an end. And the end that we're ultimately trying to affect is to make production more effective, more sustainable, more efficient. Because the fact of the matter is, we live in a time where reshoring and nearshoring is the norm. There's more and more of this. Meanwhile, we're in a constrained labor environment. You can't hire enough people, and we can't create workers fast enough. So what's the actual impact to the business in terms of output as a result of these efforts?
Well, we can make changes overnight. Quite literally, if someone comes up with an amazing idea and they're like, we will save 20 hours a week if we just have this simple tool. Well, we can create that simple tool. And with the aid of citizen developers at each site, we've done that. And I think the real win here is you don't have to go through a very iterative IT process. I mean, yes, we are partners with IT and we are backed by IT, but you don't need to have a bunch of hoops to jump through. We have a solution, and you follow the internal governance process, and it can be on the floor within a week if you could have the time to do it.
Yeah, one of the things we often talk about is like folks in manufacturing, they're born to solve problems, and that's what they do all day, every day. And they're going to use whatever tools are available to solve those problems. And if you give them bad tools, you're going to end up with
a good way to put it.
Kind of shaky solutions, you know? But if you give them the right tools, it can be tremendous, the impact you see. And so you're basically finding now, reflecting on work done and the infrastructure that you put in place. If somebody has a problem and you can't maybe hire your way out of this problem, you find opportunities to drive these efficiency gains. What did you describe it the other day, like a professional problem solver or something like that?
Yeah, you have to be a real critical thinker. Yeah, and I think that's the biggest part of this role, professional problem solver, critical thinker. If you have those basic skills, you can solve your way out of most things using a low-code, no-code technology. And it allows someone like myself who had very little backing from computer science to still build these solutions. A few years ago, we had an intern come in, business major, MBA, knows nothing about computer science. She had the opportunity to really transform the inventory control department. And she was just intrigued, wanted to learn, and had that opportunity to do so. And to date, she has made some of our most incredible applications with the quickest changeover. 6 to 8 weeks, she created 2 solutions that are still used today and have cut out, I think, 50% of the processing time in a particular department. So you don't need to have the computer science background, the engineering background. You can be a business major and still prove to be beneficial towards the business as a whole.
So speaking of, what's next for you?
Yeah, so right now I am, speaking of business, getting my own MBA, and I am minoring in, or concentrating, I guess is the correct term, innovation, because I do love innovation and where we're headed and just getting those right practices down. So I want to continue to grow in that sense, but also grow with the people that I'm working with and managing, take on more of an official management title and continue to grow and provide these tools to others and talk about the opportunities you can within the digital transformation space, because we've started, but there's a long way to go.
Well said. I see you as representative of this like new generation of person that's entering the manufacturing space. That's like one part, scrappy, not afraid of using modern tools, one part critical thinker, problem solver, and one part innovator that's like tied to the process, but also tied to the business impact. What advice would you have? And for 2 groups. The first group is for the people who are looking, maybe graduating college, and they're thinking about what sorts of opportunities exist for them, and maybe they haven't thought about frontline operations or manufacturing. Like, what advice would you have for them?
Yep.
And then what advice would you have for the people who are at these companies, at these manufacturers, these life sciences companies that are making hiring decisions about who they're going to bring onto their team?
Yeah. So first part of your question, those coming in right out of university or speeding years of the workforce, I would say there's a lot of free tools out there I didn't realize existed until I really dove into this role, whether it's fireside chats, webinars, just LinkedIn Learning. There's so much out there for you to learn about this digital transformation space. So while you're eating lunch, like throw on a podcast like this one, right? Throw on a webinar to learn a little bit more about it and enlighten yourself and see where you can take your own growth or your company's growth in a particular direction. And then I guess on the other side, for those hiring and looking to drive their digital transformation space, I think it's very important to have an individual that's motivated, but also that can think outside of the box. a lot of these solutions you aren't going to find in a book. You're going to read the room, read the process, see what you can do to change said process, and put it pen to paper and put it keys to the computer. So see what you can do there. And it's not going to be a straightforward process, but I think with the critical thinking skills, you can get there.
For anyone who might think that interns are overrated, like what do you, any advice around like what I
No,
hear?
they are not.
What I hear from time to time is, look, that's great, but we don't have the ability in-house yet.
Yeah. Fair point. While starting as an intern for this luxury jewelry
Don't get
company,
interns.
I've also had the opportunity over the last 3 summers to manage 1 intern one summer to up to 7 interns another summer. So we've really run the gamut with how to provide the right skills to different team members. And internship can be very valuable because I know over 3 interns on our small team that have been hired full-time because of these opportunities.
And they do work, you know,
they
might
do work.
Like, so you have like operational excellence teams typically. And I mean, look, at the market is in transition. The workforce is in transition. There's not broad adoption or understanding of how to employ these tools across operations. I think that's changing, but it's often the case today. I hear it all the time. Earlier today, I was on a call and they say, look, you don't understand. We're not there yet. Like we're still on pen and paper. And I say, buddy, don't worry about it. Everybody's there and it's okay. If you have people who know process, who know lean, who know how to gain efficiencies, and then if you partner them with a sophomore out of undergrad, that grew up as a digital native, and you give them access to these tools and you put them side by side, get out of the way. They're going to go far. And 2-3 years later, you might have a senior MES engineer named Nicollet, driving digital transformation across your whole organization, if you're not careful.
And if you think about it, this younger generation just joining the workforce, we're used to just having a computer at our desk since such a young age. So being tech savvy is just who we are now, right? So we can think of those little tips and tricks that maybe some of the people of the older generation don't intuitively think about. So if we take those tips and tricks that we've learned to make our life better, faster, we can now have those other opportunities to enhance other people's lives in the manufacturing process as a whole.
I'll go even a step further and say, look, if you're running an organization like this, a manufacturing operation, life sciences operation, and you aren't thinking in this way, be careful, because these workers aren't coming to your company. They're going to go somewhere where these tools do exist. And, I have living proof of this in front of me. Nicollet, I appreciate you taking the time to come in and chat with us today. Congratulations on all your success. I know
Thank you very much.
You've got a long list of things ahead of you. You've got a big milestone just behind you. I know you're just getting started, but I appreciate you coming on and sharing the story today.
Yeah, thanks very much, Eric. Pleasure talking with you.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the Augmented Ops podcast from Tulip Interfaces. We hope you found this week's episode informative and inspiring. You can find the show on LinkedIn and YouTube, or at tulip.co/podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a rating or review on iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Until next time.